Okay, so welcome today to this version of Mississippi as it is in heaven. And it's not that we're telling everybody to go to heaven. We're saying we want it to be like heaven here in Mississippi, and we think we have potential to be there. Okay, so I want to be very positive about that. But I'm Ruth Ann, and Jan is with me, and we want to talk about what's going on in Mississippi and just take a deep look into everything. Now, um, one of the things that I have been asking some questions about and that I have been investigating is all of these new businesses that's coming into the state. Okay. And I think it's very important, and I think it's going to be very imperative to our state because it's really setting a thing for our future. I can look and say my grandchildren have a potential instead of saying leave the state. But I'm going to say something. We've got to learn to bless our state. Okay. We've got to learn to look for the positive. And even though we're going to talk about some negative today, we've got to learn how to overcome the uh, negative and get it to the positive. And that's a part of intercessory duty. That's a part of what we're called to do. That's a part of the kingdom of God. Okay. So we're just not called to complain. Okay. We're called to know the truth because the truth is going to set you free, but we're also called to know what's going on. Okay. So, Jan,
Yeah,
you want to add to that before I start?
no, I agree completely.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I took a big look at this week and wanted to talk some about is Meridian, Mississippi is getting a huge industry that is coming in. It's probably the biggest investment so far of all the industries coming into the state of Mississippi. It's a $10 billion investment. Okay. So basically, that's going to do a lot of things. I didn't know this, but this $10 billion investment is actually going to increase property taxes. I did not know that. Okay. It's going to increase revenue for the state, but when you get in the place, and I'm going to talk about where they're putting it, it's actually going to, the value of it is going to raise property taxes. So your property value will be raised by it coming in, but property taxes, we're going to have to balance that. That's an issue that's got to be balanced. And of all the things that's been looking at in our country, that needs a doge, okay, to look at property taxes. But the funds actually from this business that's coming into Lauderdale County, they're counting on it to impact roads, utilities, public safety, community development, and schools. And I can definitely see that, okay? So it is a data center and it's going to require a lot of things. It's going to require a lot of power. So one of the things that maybe we didn't look at, they had to get a commitment from the power companies. Could they supply the power? Okay. So this is going to be an increase in the power that's going to have to be developed for that area. And the power companies in Meridian have already agreed to that, but I didn't realize this. It means it's also going to have an increase in water supply. So not only was the power companies having to commit the water, another thing, upgrade means other benefits. The internet fiber in Meridian has to increase. So those are some different things that I didn't realize that was going to be affected. I mean, we think a new business is coming in, okay? So basically, Mississippi Power is promising an additional grid capacity of 500 megawatts. So they had to agree and promise for this tech to come. So I want to look on some more about it, okay? So what's it going to do? Well, there's already a community college in Meridian and a Mississippi State branch in Meridian, but it's going to require ITech program trainings. It's going to require scholarships to be released for IT and electrical engineering, and it's going to cause internships and apprentice programs. So there's another benefit coming in from this. Just to say, okay, now it's going to be 8 campuses and it's going to be built in increments of a campus a year for the next 8 years. Okay, it's not going to be just set down all at once. Okay, So it's going to start out with 1,600 jobs once the first campus is built, and it's going to increase to about 3,200 jobs. But the thing about it is, what I'm telling you is not only are these jobs going to increase, the electric company to supply is going to have to increase. Okay, the water company to do all that it's going to have to do is increase. So there's more that's going to be affected than just directly working for this plant. Okay, there's going to be temporary construction jobs. They're thinking that's going to be 1,000 or more people coming in to build, and that's over 8 years. So we have an 8-year promise of 1,000 or more people working in construction. That's very interesting to me. And it's going to increase the tax base, just like I talked about, because it's going to run up the property taxes. So guess what's increasing? The tax base of the whole thing. And I never realized this. To me, this has been a adventure into looking at everything in Meridian that's going to have to change. Okay. And I would say it's going to be some major changes in Meridian, because especially when the tax base increases in the area where this is going to be built, that's going to increase a lot of different things. Now, let's take a look a little bit deeper into this. Okay, the owners. Who is the owner of this plant? Okay, we find just a name for it coming in as a database company. Back, actually, it would say Compass Database Center. I had to know, and I started looking in just what is that. Okay, it's going to be a massive purpose-built facility, and here's what it's going to do. It's going to host cloud services, application, and data storage. Come on, folks. It's going to store what we put on cloud. Isn't that amazing? It's going to store databases. It's going to store all of that thing. It's going to be like an internet warehouse where we store our videos, our apps, our websites, and even artificial intelligence. Never dreamed we're going to have all these buildings to store artificial intelligence. Wow. Okay. Now, so basically, they're cloud companies like Microsoft, there's Google, that actually lease operations in facilities like this for their storage. I'm learning something new. Okay. Never realized it's just a whole change in how we think about things. Okay. So, what else is going to happen? Well, yeah, the banks are going to have to increase to handle what this is bringing. Employees do, I mean, I hadn't thought about that. Okay. It will also, retailers in Meridian, that area will definitely be affected. Okay. So, this is like, wow, a whole new, I don't know, thought pattern of everything that's going to come together. Okay. But let's talk about, I had to go deeper. I couldn't just satisfy with this is Compass Data Center. Okay. Who owns Compass Data Center? Fair question. Well, can you believe this? It's the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund. They're the investors in it. So this data center is going to be the investment in this Ontario. This is Canada, folks. So, what is it? It's a major Canadian pension fund managing retirement benefits for teachers in Ontario, Canada. Meridian, Mississippi is going to be supporting the teacher fund of Ontario, Canada by this huge data center.
How about that?
How about that? I mean, this is a whole adventure into this, okay? But there is another owner. Okay, and that is Brookfield Infrastructure Partners. What is that? That just doesn't tell me very much. It's a public traded subsidiary of Brookfield Asset Managers. It is one of the largest global alternative investment funds around. So we have the Teachers Pension Fund, and we have one of the largest global alternative investment funds. Okay. They own and operate critical infrastructure in places like utilities, transportation, energy, and data infrastructures. So basically, we have two owners that I never would have dreamed. I never would have dreamed of how they're investing to make more money for their investors. Okay. I asked some questions and I did some research. Would it have any connection like to Bitcoin or the new, Bitcoin operation that's coming about? I did not find any links to that. It all links to storage, AI storage, computer storage, cloud storage. Where do you put your pictures? That's helping support and build money for the Ontario, Canada teachers and the other. It's amazing. Okay. I wonder if we need to look at, instead of banks charging all the interest rates they do, what they need to invest in. Just a thought. Just a thought. Okay. But I wanted to take another adventure, and I asked the question: is which one of our key political figures in the state, besides Governor Tate Reeves, has been negotiating and pushing this into Meridian? Okay, so Senator Jeff Tate of Lauderdale County has been collaborating and working and pushing to get Meridian a huge investment. Okay, and this is what he did. He's also been working with Bill Cork, CORK, who is executive director of the Mississippi Development Authority. Okay, they've been working on this and pushing it into East Mississippi. I think this is very interesting. There's another man by Bill Hanna. He was president of the East Mississippi Business Development Corporation. He's the third one in this group that has been working along with Governor Tate Reeves. And these three gentlemen, especially being connected with East Mississippi, is definitely pushed to jump in and get this facility into East Mississippi, which is going to be a great, great thing for Meridian. But when we look at Meridian, I'm scratching my head just like everybody else is, okay? Because what about the crime rate that's going on in Meridian?
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. There's a big crime rate we talk about in Jackson, okay? But unless sometimes we don't look at any other part of the state but Jackson, okay? Because we do hear it. It is the capital city. But Meridian has been involved in a huge crime rate, and right now they're involved in a very heated, and I say heated, mayor election, just like it's going on in Jackson, Mississippi. And that's going to determine a lot of where the city goes, okay? Percy Bland, who's already been mayor one time, he lost the last election to Jimmy Smith, okay? Jimmy Smith has already been defeated by Percy Bland by 67% of the votes. Okay. Basically, Percy Bland served as mayor from 2013. Um, but today he's running against Jimmy Copeland, who's running as an independent. And that's an interesting race to see what's going to basically look at the crime rate in the city of Meridian that has been so high with murders, especially. Okay. It's been coming alongside of Jackson. Okay. In the crime and murder rate. Now, Jackson, I don't know. That's all I can say. We need a lot of prayer for Jackson, and we need a lot of prayer for Meridian. One of the things that I investigated and I asked directly, and I did some investigations into some magazines that did interviews with the companies that's coming into Meridian, and they're hoping by raising property taxes by, and I didn't think about this, by setting such a higher standard is going to reduce crime. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I never looked at it as putting a data center like this in a place and it reducing the crime rate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this adventure into looking at this has been a adventure in learning for me. Okay. Simply because I've never looked at and why they would put it there with such a high crime rate. These senators and um directors are hoping that it's going to change the crime rate. That's going to be interesting to see and what's going to be done. But I took a look into Jackson. That's a very heated election there. Meridian is not running the same type of election right now in the mayor's race that Jackson is. It is amazing. You have Senator John Horn, a Democrat, running. You have Kenneth G., a Republican, running. And you have Rodney DePriest. You have Lil Stewart Robinson and Kim Wade running for, and Zach Zevis, all running for mayor. And Zach Zevis was removed from city council meeting because he wore his political shirt to the meeting. Thought that was interesting. Okay. But that is basically, but the crime rate in Jackson, let's take a look at it. The crime rate in Jackson says a rate of 40 for every 1,000 people, 40 is affected. Okay, overall. But let's break it down. In violent crimes in Jackson, 1 in every 193 people are affected. But in property crime, 1 in every 28 people are affected in Hinds County, which is basically a high number. And actually, they think in Jackson, the projection for 2025, they think in property crime alone is going to estimate about $197 million.
To invest.
That's
Yeah.
too high. Okay. So the violent crime rate in Hinds County um, is ranking high in the 78th percentile for safety. Okay. The Northwest County is the safest part. The Southeast part of the county sees the highest crime rates. Okay. So basically, that is a lot of crime for a capital city. But we're going to watch and see if Meridian gets a change. And if the political people can change Meridian by building on this data center and seeing if the data center and the rate of property and all that is going to affect the I have never thought of that, but it's going to be interesting to see what they can do with it. And can it change the inner city crime rate in the inner city of Meridian? It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, time will tell. You know what excites me about what you said with the Oregon retired teachers? Is that what you said?
Ontario, Canada.
Ontario. Um, is that retirement systems do invest,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll invest in a variety of different things. And I'm glad they diversify and don't just invest in stocks or bonds.
That's
I hope
true.
there's more that they do. I hope that this is wildly successful and that this makes the Ontario retirement for teachers one of the most stable in the world, so that other retirement systems will invest likewise.
Yes, and I'm really looking at that, and I'm going to delve into it some more because, my question is, how much do we overlook the power of investing? I mean, this is a large corporate thing for them to invest in, but it tells me they've been building investments for years to do this.
Yeah.
And this is something our public needs to be aware of how it works. Um, it's just a big thing. And our politicians, to make this work, to bring it in with a crime rate in Meridian being high, murder rate being in the city high, and then them hoping to change it through bringing in such a industry, is I'm anxious to see what it does and actually what Percy Bland um, or Jimmy Copeland, who's running as independent. There is a Republican, Derek Bowler. So I'm anxious to see who shakes out and who can they figure out how to use this correctly. That's going to be something to watch.
It will be. It will be. Exciting times.
It is. So, Jan, go ahead. You wanted to kind of add on to this politician thing.
That's right. So rather than look into any individual activities that are going on in our cities, our towns around Mississippi, I have been, I'm going to say, increasingly concerned personally about what are the things, what am I looking for in a politician? Um, and I have been writing for a couple of days now to get my thoughts on paper. And I wanted to share some of it here, and we can talk through this. So I'll say a little something. Give me your feedback and that kind of thing. So, but I will keep us going, and any parts that I need to skip over, I'll skip over if we're getting to be too long.
Okay.
So, in a nutshell, what I decided, and this was something that after I had been writing for a while about my concerns. So, I am a retired state employee. I am somewhat familiar. I'm not as familiar as others with the economy that we have here in Mississippi. And as a native Mississippian, I want Mississippi to succeed.
Mhm.
So that's my context. What I have come up with that I'm looking for in a politician is a pioneer. And with this definition of the word, one who opens up new areas of thought, research, or development. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm talking about a new type of politician with a new type of platform that we haven't been seeing. What you're talking about with the investment in data centers,
Uh-huh.
that looks like a um, um, opportunity laden opportunity. Uh, I'm 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 not getting my words right. It looks like something that could greatly benefit the state because it would bring more diversification to Mississippi's economy. I hope these data centers succeed. There's one also under construction by Amazon in
Yeah,
Madison County,
it is.
and there may be others that are in the works. I will say that our economic developers are some of the hardest working people in the state that I know personally. And I have some knowledge of that, not a great deal, but I do have some knowledge of that. They are very hardworking people. But so going back to politicians and what a pioneer is, next I'm going to say what a pioneer is not. And it's some of what we've seen lately. There's been very little differentiation. If someone was running under a Democrat ticket, they stood for the same things the other Democrat candidates stood for. If someone was running under a Republican ticket, they stood for the same things other Republicans stood for. And they came down to who was the most gregarious, who was the one that the public liked, where did public opinion fall? And there wasn't differentiation in platforms. I haven't seen that in a long time.
That's good.
So, what I think that would, to give actual examples, I've got three of what I think we've seen with little differentiation. An example of that is an echo voice. That's what I'm calling it, an echo voice, saying what worked in previous elections. If it
Oh,
got the last Republican hired, then I'm going to use it too. If
okay.
it got the last Democrat hired, then I'm going to use it too. The second thing is taking credit for results where they exerted minimal direct effort. That
Wow.
happens a lot.
Yes.
Now, I can also say very confidently and this goes back to the little bit of experience that I have had in economic development circles. There are some people who put forth an enormous amount of work to get these announcements that we're going to have a new industry locate anywhere in the state. That doesn't happen by chance, and there is tremendous competition that other states want those companies to.
That's true.
So
That is
our economic developers have and some of the politicians, it will probably be a politician from the area, wherever this location, the announcement is, where it's going to be located. So it'd be interesting to note, did any of these people who are running for mayor of Meridian, were any of them involved in this site selection
that would.
that Meridian was selected for this visit? That'd just be really interesting. But what we most often see is people take credit for results that they had little direct effort in. And I'm going to give a couple of examples. The Mississippi Miracle. The Mississippi Miracle is the rise in our third graders' scores, what they're able to do, their achievements. Now, the problem I have with wide scale, so this would be Republican candidates are going to use that more than likely.
That's true.
More so than I would expect a Democratic candidate, because this is something that has been one of our current governor's priorities.
It has.
It's a wonderful thing. I'm not saying it's not good, but if someone didn't have direct involvement, if they didn't put forth the effort, then don't take the credit for it.
So good.
Unless you're a third grade teacher.
Yes,
and you want to for office.
I agree. And those third grade teachers implemented it. Yes,
yes.
That is implemented.
Yes. I don't want to see a superintendent take credit for it. And I would be really hard pressed to say it's okay for a principal to take credit for it. I want a classroom teacher taking credit for that. And if a politician is going to run with that as part of their platform, our education and continuing Mississippi on the right trajectory, then set up an advisory panel of teachers from the classroom.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, so that's part of it. That's part of what I'm looking for, instead of taking credit for something you had minimal effort in. Another example of that is the elimination of the state income tax. So just because you allowed it to be considered in committee and you didn't let it die, doesn't mean you're that vested in it. Just because you brought it to the floor for a vote for whichever house you represent, doesn't mean you necessarily take credit for the bill.
I agree. That's very good.
Let's put the effort let's put credit where the effort came from. That's the only place credit is due. All right. So that shouldn't be someone's main platform point. Another thing, this is the third one, is creating a platform designed around public opinion, regardless of how it aligns with this candidate's convictions and values. And the reason why I say that is that when the rubber meets the road and they get down to negotiations in a committee, this is going to be a legislative committee more than likely, where a lot of these platforms are decided. Then if it's not something that is a heart conviction and it's just something they grabbed because it's public opinion, it's publicly popular, they're going to drop the ball and let something slide by that shouldn't be allowed. And what we need instead is a politician who will, if that bill is watered down, table it, wait for the next session. Don't settle for something that's diluted. And so anyway, all right. So I'll give examples of this. Domestic terrorism. Well, what have you done for me lately? How involved are you? Have you had effort that you put forth? Or did somebody else do that work for you? Then don't claim this as something you can take credit for. Illegal immigration, human trafficking, pro-life. I don't want to see a politician take credit for something where they haven't put forth the effort.
I like that. That's very good.
Okay,
Very good.
that's page 1.
Okay.
Instead, what I want to see a politician do is the hard things. Things that would level the foundation of our state's government instead of a lopsided governing that we have now, where we blame one party or the other
That's right.
for problems. Every problem is someone else's failure, not our own. I want to see that end. The equivalent of this is tackling a crumbling infrastructure, because I'm talking about a political infrastructure, the political environment. So the first example that I would give of this, and this one's a doozy, Ruth Ann, I would do a deep cleanse of influence. And I'm speaking specifically to lobbying activities.
As I was writing the word lobbying down.
Government consulting, because that's influence.
It is.
This will take more than one person in an elected office, and it will be a cause that can't be completed without a generation of thought. This is a long-term thing. This isn't something that someone can use as a platform and consider it completed within their first term.
I agree, but this is how things like the drug companies have gotten such a hold on the people.
Yes.
And all this money in the middle in these drug companies, that is so questionable. Go ahead. I like what you're saying.
All right. So, for example, I would limit the influence of lobbyists. Now, I went to lobbyingdata.com, that's the website, to pull to be more succinct, to keep from rambling. I have pulled 3 things that they consider the 3 main techniques of lobbyists, and I will tell you what they are. The first one is advocacy, the second one is campaigning, and the third one is networking. Let's talk about those. With advocacy, this is from lobbyingdata.com. This is their definition of advocacy: to meet with lawmakers to present their clients' views and influence policy decisions. That's what advocacy is. Campaigning, again from the website, mobilizing public support for their clients' causes through advertising, social media, and public relations.
Mhm.
And the third one, networking, again defined on this website, is building relationships with key policymakers and officials to gain access and influence. Now, how can we cleanse these 3 areas? First of all, I think we should consider aligning access to policymakers according to the limitations of access to a jurist.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Well, there's a
There's a thought.
Now, that was probably going to get as high as a lead balloon, but I'm gonna say a little more. I don't want policymakers isolated, and a jurist is isolated. So I don't mean in the same proportion, but I do want them to be held accountable to who influences their decisions, how they vote. That's their decision, is how they vote. If a pharmaceutical bill is introduced, then every sector of society that would be affected by the policy should have equal access to advocate for their perspective.
That is so good, and that is so true.
Isn't it? So you think normally pharmaceutical manufacturers, but let's go further than that. How about pharmacists And then not just pharmacists. How about independent
Yes.
pharmacists?
Well,
And
how
then let's go further than that. How
Yeah.
about school health officers,
Okay.
parent advocacy groups, the ones who can't afford a lobbyist? I've got more written down. How about some integrative and functional medicine advocacy groups? And each one should have equal access
I
to
definitely,
the policymaker,
that
not
is so,
just one side. Yeah. Okay. So,
definitely agree.
second,
Let's
you
just
want
go
to say
back to
something?
your list. What about the naturopathic doctors? What if they
Yeah.
could be there?
Right. Yeah. And I was including them in the integrative health and functional medicine. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. They should be able to have as much access to a lawmaker as a pharmaceutical manufacturer.
I agree. I definitely.
Because what's happening is a very convincing argument is being presented, a compelling argument is being presented
Mhm.
by a minority of the people who are affected by a policy when it comes to pharmaceuticals.
That is so true.
And then our policymaker, they're not supposed to be experts on the pharmaceutical industry. So they're doing the best they can. But why don't we better define the access to this policymaker? And why don't we make sure, let's build it into, let's introduce a bill that there must be a more holistic approach to advocacy access.
I like that.
Okay. So the next one is regarding campaigning. That's the second technique that these lobbyists employ to gain influence. So efforts should be aimed at mobilizing public support. Wait, no, efforts that are aimed at mobilizing public support should be required to present, and this, now I'm building partly on my attitude as a mother and my attitude as a supervisor. Okay. So I'll give you that context for this. So any effort that is mobilizing public support should be required to present the problem, suggest a solution, provide pros and cons, and suggest alternatives so that campaigns can't be isolated to exclusively favor one client's interest.
That is so good. Wow.
You know, even Amazon has influencers on social media.
Hmm.
And the more I realized how um, how easily it is to influence a person, I think that's something that now requires regulation. Could
That
we consider that this is in some ways a monopoly towards access to our lawmakers?
I like this.
All right, and then the final one. This is the networking technique that lobbyists use. Relationships developed around a specific purpose are manipulation. Period. You're not friends. Drop the incentives, outlaw them, make them illegal.
That's true.
No more trips paid by lobbyists when we know good and well those are funded by the clients they represent.
That is so true. And that
They
is,
are, yeah, they are not your friend. And being in elected office shouldn't make you special. It should make you accountable.
I agree. Oh my gosh, that is so good.
If God holds his spokespeople accountable to a higher standard, oh, that would be James 3:1,
Yes, it would.
then that principle should be built in the very fabric of our government. It should be foundational to our infrastructure.
I like this.
Okay, another example. I am on page 4 now, so
Okay.
we're making progress. Okay. Another example of the type of political platform that we need by our politicians in Mississippi is that let's see, is one that initiates economic reforms that no other state has pursued. I don't even know what all that could be, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Reforms that do the opposite of what NAFTA did to our Mississippi towns.
Now you've got my attention.
So, what I would ask ourselves, our politicians, our candidates who are vying for the next elected offices, all of us, let's all ponder these questions. Which sectors add true value and which ones do not? Economic developers, they're hard workers. And if they can bring a $10 billion investment into Meridian, Mississippi, then I would say that adds value.
I did.
But let's not call value wholesale. Let's make it accountable for every action and every platform of a campaign. Okay. An economy that layers complexity and separates the maker from the buyer. So the one who makes it from the one who buys it, adds cost and dilutes value. Bigger isn't always better.
That's true.
Let's be authentically ourselves. Let's be authentically Mississippi. Finally, let's take individual identity out of politics. And here I am speaking specifically to DEI. As it's currently packaged, DEI seeks to weaponize identity. Fault and blame are labeled on certain characteristics and genealogy. This is not unique, and it's never been aligned with biblical principles. Never. Not when it had a different name, slavery, and not when it's got the name that it has now. There are grave dangers in suggesting that value comes from external characteristics or genealogy. You are not the sum total of your parts. You are not the sum total of your ancestors, period. You're not. If God looks on the heart, why do we think value is found anywhere but internally to a person? God chooses what the world ridicules. He always has, and he always will. And I would refer you specifically to 1 Samuel 16, verse 7, when God chose David, a shepherd boy, to be king, and not just any king, but one whose throne, whose kingdom would never end, because he's in the line of Jesus. So I'm not surprised that a man-made initiative would assign value to an external characteristic. That's also in 1 Samuel 16:7. Man looks on the outside, God looks at the heart. So we would expect that, okay? But it's time for someone to explain this beyond PR talking points. I'm not willing to let an initiative labeled DEI to take ownership of diversity and inclusion. It is a foundational principle that diverse thought is needed for mankind. That's also in Scripture. It's 1 Corinthians 13:9. The thing that's usually emphasized by people when they're quoting 1 Corinthians 13:9 is the prophesying part. But what comes before prophesying part? It says we know in part.
That's true.
That means nobody gets the whole download.
That is so true.
Nobody owns all the knowledge. To my knowledge, King Solomon died.
That's
and he was supposedly the wisest man on earth. Well, he ain't alive anymore. So if every person contributes identical thoughts, decision making is incomplete.
That is really true, and that's God.
Yes. The strongest teams include people who think differently, with equal importance placed on their perspective. All right, and finally, in conclusion, I'm looking for a pioneer mentality in our next generation of elected officials in Mississippi. Minus the manifest destiny mindset. No one has the right to take over. Not one party, not one mindset. We need people who are willing to cleanse a deteriorated governing infrastructure. Go back and examine the deterioration of our government's checks and balances. They're there for a reason. And look at the hard things that need to be done. Let's see them developed in Mississippi first, and let's watch the rest of the nation follow suit.
We need to be followed now. You're right. Instead of ridiculed. Wow. Okay, we have a little problem here.
Sorry, I hit a button.
Welcome back.
I was putting all my papers down and hit a button on the keyboard. So
This is really great. This is what you put together is really great. I don't know where to begin.
I've been thinking about this for a while.
I can tell you've been thinking about it for a while, and I think it needs to be packaged, and we need to talk some more about that.
Okay.
Wow, this is amazing. But this goes right along with the economic development part that we've been talking about today. It is
And the elections, the mayor elections, all of it. It all fits together.
It is definitely. And to do what we're going to have to watch done in Meridian to take over and change and use the economy to shift the crime, it's going to take creativity. It's going to take a pioneer.
Yeah, it is. It's going to take new people running for elected office who haven't been corrupted.
That's true.
Because I'm not going to trust the ones who have.
That is really true. And this is in all elections. We've got mayor elections across the state coming up. We got city council elections across the state. And folks, I'm going to say this. You don't need to put them in a local office because they can gain power from a local office to go to a higher office if they're not measuring up to what you're looking for. Don't just mark an X just because they're there.
Right. Amen.
That's true. So thank you for joining us today. This is great. I'm excited over this myself. Go back, listen to it, and take notes. And
we'll see you next time.